The Red Kayak, Chapter 15. Digger was in his front yard shooting baskets with his little brother Hank when I skidded to a halt on my bike. But Hank was the only one who seemed happy to see me. "Hey, Brady, watch this!" he called out as he bounced the ball off a rusted and netless basket rim. Lowering my bike to its side, I took off my backpack and set it on its wheel, eyes fixed on Digger, who was retrieving the basketball and still hadn't said a word. Did he suspect something? Had he been dreading this moment for a long time? When I started walking toward him, Digger gave the ball to Hank and said, "Go inside, okay?" Hank, you. Hank never argued with Digger because he looked up to him too much. He bounced the basketball once and left. Digger hooked his thumbs in his front pockets of his jeans. "What's up?" he asked, kind of squinting his eyes at me. He suspected why I was there, I thought, and I stopped, hesitating. All those years we'd known each other, all the laughs we had, the plans we shared, the trouble we got into, spun by in a blur. But I realized we could never go back to the way it was. Already, the friendship had changed. "You know I'm working at the D'Angelo's now, right?" I asked. Digger just kept staring at me. "Well, I found something over there today when I was raking up near the boathouse." His expression did not change. But when I saw Digger's chin lift up a little, "I found my dad's drill." Digger arched his eyebrows. "So?" "So I'm wondering how it got there," I shot back, ticked off that he was making this difficult. "I'm wondering why it has flecks of red paint on it." Digger swallowed. We locked eyes. "Beats me," he said. "Come on," I argued. "We both know what you did. JT's already told me." Digger frowned and his lips parted as a scared look softened his steely expression. I was sure he'd admit to it then. "Where is it?" he asked. "Where's the drill?" "Back there," I lied. "I left it where I found it. Why? Why do you care?" "I don't care," Digger snapped, toughening up again. "And I don't know what you're getting at, Brady." We stared at each other for a few seconds. "I gotta go," Digger said, pulling his thumbs from his pockets and turning away while I stood there like an idiot watching him. "Digger!" I called out. Faster and faster he walked, but never looked back. When the screen door slammed, I kicked at a stone and stomped back to where my bike lay on the ground. Tossing my backpack on, I yanked up the bicycle and hopped on, kicking hard at the pedals. I worried that I was being a coward, letting him walk away the way he did. Questions hammered at me. Should I turn around and force him to admit it? How? How would I do that? Should I tell my parents? Should we call the police? I didn't know, so I kept on pedaling. When I got to the road, I headed for home. Riding up our driveway, I saw Mom's car was gone. Under a flower pot, I scooped up the hidden key for the side door and let myself in. The house was silent, except for Tilly's toenails clicking down the tiled hallway as she came to greet me. I saw on the counter a lemon cake my mother made me for the Memorial Day picnic. Tilly licked my hands and I touched her on the head before letting her go out the back door. The next thing I did was take the drill out of my backpack and hide it because it was all mixed up. Afraid one minute, angry the next. I needed time to think. In the basement, I opened up a cupboard underneath Dad's workbench and pulled out a box full of rags. Lifting a handful of old curtains, I stashed the drill deep down at the bottom and pushed the box back underneath. Tiny Tim, on a nearby shelf, heard me and crawled out of his newspaper nest, so I let him sniff my finger, then I gave him a few sunflower seeds. Back upstairs, I suddenly realized that in my haste of leaving the D'Angelo's, I hadn't put away a single thing. I hadn't even closed up their garage. I moaned and slapped my hand against my thigh, then called Tilly in and got back on my bicycle. Right away at the D'Angelo's, I sensed that something wasn't right. As I walked down the hill to the boathouse, I heard a noise, like a door closing, and froze mid-step. My eyes darted around. I didn't see anyone, but I noticed that the garbage bag I had filled with brush and trash had been spilled out. Forcing my feet to move, I made my way toward the boathouse and saw that the trash was strewn everywhere, like it had been kicked around, and that the rake that I had dropped when I found the drill now leaned up against the building. Cautiously, I opened up the door to the boathouse. "Who is here?" I called in. At first, silence, but then a soft scraping noise confirmed my suspicion, and Digger slowly stood up from where he had been crouching behind a grain barrel in the corner. Because of the way the light came through the boathouse, he was a silhouette, but I knew the compact, lean body, the way he held his muscular shoulders back. What are you doing here? I demanded. You darn well know what I'm doing here, Brady. You're looking for the drill, I said. Digger stepped around the barrel. And if you know what's good for you, you'll give it to me. It's not here. Well, then, if you picked it up, it's got your fingerprints on it too now, doesn't it? I scowled. I had my work gloves on, I said, but the truth is that I'd taken off my gloves before I picked up the drill. It never occurred to me that I might be handling evidence. Digger's voice started to sound panicky. I'm telling you, Brady, if you don't get rid of that drill and keep your mouth shut, you'll be in a lot of trouble. Did do it, didn't you? You put holes in Mr. D'Angelo's kayak. Digger didn't say anything, but I took the silence to mean yes. You and JT? I pressed. Digger's mouth became a tight, straight line. You could never prove it. An image of the red kayak lying at the bottom of the river flashed through my mind. Why? I threw up my hands. Why did you guys do it? Digger looked away for a second, and when he looked back at me, his voice had lost its angry timbre. You remember the day we went over there on your boat, Brady? The day we had us a smoke? I settled my hands back down on my hips, recalling an afternoon in early April when Digger said he had something to show us, and the something turned out to be a cigarette. Yeah, I said, frowning. I remember. Well, think back on it, Digger told me. So I did. I thought back to how we had gone there to the D'Angelo's beach because it was a favorite spot of ours. We hadn't been worried about the new property owner seeing us because their new house was up and out of sight, up the hill beyond their new three-car garage. Nearby, Mr. D'Angelo's new red kayak rested on two wooden sawhorses. We'd already seen the kayak. We three just happened to be at the 7-Eleven a few weeks previous when Mr. D'Angelo pulled into the parking lot with the new kayak strapped on top of his silver Porsche. It was quite a sight because the kayak was longer than the car. Agape, we'd stood on the sidewalk with our sodas while he waved and dashed into the store. Probably needs to run in and buy a Rolex, JT joked. Yeah, or a diamond stud to put where the sun don't shine, Digger muttered. The kayak rested on the sawhorses by the D'Angelo's dock the day that Digger tried to get us to smoke. Come on, what are you afraid of? Digger had goaded me, shoving the cigarette in my face. I had an uncle who died from lung cancer, I told him. Carl's dad, in fact, and I didn't want anything whatsoever to do with smoking. Digger had cupped his hands around the cigarette to relight it after the wind put it out. Then he blew smoke out the side of his mouth like an old pro and offered it to me again. One puff ain't gonna turn you into an addict. I had to screw up my face to make the point. They make me gag. So Digger had turned to JT, thrusting it at him. For crying out loud, you weakling, it's not like you're gonna keel over and die right here on the spot. Digger had a way of pushing JT around, and darned if JT didn't accept that cigarette, take a quick puff, and hand it back. It was at that moment that Mr. D'Angelo had shown up with a golf club in his hand, scared the you-know-what out of us. He must have been behind the house practicing his swing or something and heard us talking. What are you guys doing? He asked. JT was coughing, but we'd both stepped away from Digger, who had brought the cigarette down quickly and pulled his incriminating hand behind his back. I see, Mr. D'Angelo had said. Look, it's none of my business if you guys are smoking, but it is my business when you're on my property. You guys need to leave. If I catch you here again, I'm calling your parents. I had hung my head. I was so ashamed. It was only a couple weeks before that I had babysat for Ben all afternoon. That's it. Out of here, he had ordered us. I'm sorry, sir. I tried to apologize. We didn't mean anything. Mr. D'Angelo had spun away. He didn't even wait to make sure that we were gone. We did leave, though. Got right in my boat and went home. I was so ticked off at Digger that I could barely stand to look at him. When we got back to the dock at my house, Digger was itchy for revenge. Let's do something to get back at that creep. Except he didn't say creep. I had waved a hand at him. I've got homework, I'm going in. You then, Digger had ordered JT. You owe me one from the other day when Curtis was hitting on you. Curtis was an incredible bully at school. They had set off down our driveway arguing while I went inside. I never looked back at them, and it had never, ever occurred to me that they didn't blow off steam and go home that day. That instead, they went down to my dad's workshop, stole the drill and glue, and sneaked back to the D'Angelo's beach. I squeezed my eyes shut, recalling the events. When I opened them again, I looked sadly at Digger. You did it because Mr. D'Angelo kicked us off his property? He didn't need to talk to us the way that he did, Digger argued. You know darn well, Brady, that it goes a lot deeper than that. I hate D'Angelo. How in the heck did I know that his wife was going to take the kid out for a spin in that kayak? I shook my head, not wanting to believe what I was hearing. Look, Brady, Digger pleaded as he came up to me. No one knows what happened. If you get rid of the drill and don't say anything, no one will ever know, and none of us will be in trouble. But Digger, it was wrong, man. I mean, Ben's dead. Suddenly, Digger grabbed the front of my shirt. You think telling the cops is going to change any of that? You think telling the truth brings the kid back? I knocked his hand off and pushed him away. No! Digger came back at me so angrily, practically spit in my face. It just makes it worse, because then they'll accuse us of murder. Murder? I repeated in disbelief. I stared at him. Yeah, murder! They'll send us all to reform school. JT, me, and you too, he railed, thumping me on the chest with his finger. Because don't forget, Brady, it was your idea in the first place. So that's the end of the chapter.